Kind of rough hair. All right, then. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us again for another Hangout. It's the second of a two-part serial of a Hangout. Of course, the channel's been Google Plus Hangout on the implementation of SDGs in Nigeria. And joining me to look at this, first and foremost, is Diko Awojide. Diko, good evening, and thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you very much, Victor. Good evening to you.
All right, I'm also joining me is Jalwa Bello. Jalwa, also, thanks, good evening, and once again for coming on the program.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
All right, of course, Deepa, let me just good put you on a hold and start with Jalwa now, looking at the implementation of the SDG 17 of them. Um, but first, let's even look at the MDGs. We had 8 of the MDGs. This time around, we're having double plus 1 of that number. But looking at the implementation of the MDGs in Nigeria, and now we're transitioning from that part of our lives to the next one. How well would you say we've done, and how well do you think we can do in implementing what we have signed to implement at the moment?
Okay, in terms of how well we've done with the MDGs, there are mixed reports because it all comes down to data. For example, if we're measuring universal basic education, we shouldn't just look at the net enrollment rate, we also have to look at the completion rate, but there are mixed results all through. However, the MDGs weren't implemented very well because of lack of awareness from the beginning. So what we should do with the SDGs now is to try and create more awareness from this developing stage, because failure to do so will just be a mockery on our part because we're trying to implement them. And secondly, we need to improve our data. We need to have very believable and verifiable data. We need to have strict monitoring and reporting policies so they can be implemented better. And lastly, we need to engage everyone. That's through public awareness, like we're doing now on social media, SDGs events, like the Dean Initiative in Abuja, I think in October, the 1,000 man walk. So if we engage the public, I think we'll do something. And the MDGs, one problem with the MDGs was that it was more at a federal level. So we should try and engage everyone now, the federal, the state, the local, individuals, NGOs, private sectors, just everyone, really.
Okay, very well. You're saying that everyone needs to be engaged, and you think a level of awareness needs to be raised in implementing the SDGs, because you feel the level of implementation or the level of awareness was little in terms of the MDGs, and you say it was more of a federal project. But Digbo, let me just come to you. I mean, Joel was saying something like you heard, and I just restated that as well. But what do you make of it? What do you think of our implementation of the MDGs, and how well do you think we will do with the new pact that we have signed to? Just hold on a bit. Just hold on a moment.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, with the MDGs, I think it was a bit. I mean, like Jawa actually mentioned earlier, there wasn't that publicity, and we could actually conclude that most of the state governments and the areas where most of these goals should actually have been implemented, due to corruption, I would say, we didn't really get as much result as we should get. But with the new SDGs, with the information out there, with how this is being amplified, and with the help of social media and all the guys who are now demanding for good governance and accountability from public officials, I think the SDGs in Nigeria would actually, we would get more results than we did the previous goals.
Okay, like now we're seeing an increase from the previous budget. Last year we had a budget of 4.3 billion naira, 4.3 trillion actually. But this time around we're seeing a budget of 6.0 trillion naira. I mean, implementation wise now, how do you think this will play out in Nigeria?
I think it is very good that the budget has actually been increased. But like I said earlier, I mean, if we think about what corruption has done to Nigeria, if 10 billion naira or 15 billion naira is allocated for a particular project, and the public officials in charge of such a project actually divert 60% or 70% of such budget into their own personal account and private bank accounts, nothing is going to happen. I mean, the results that we're going to get will not be as much as we should get. So it is very good and commendable that the budget has been increased, but more importantly, there has to be accountability. So every 100 naira, every 1,000 naira that is spent on that project or that is allocated for that project has to be tracked.
All right, you're talking about tracking, but I'll come back to you later on in the show on that. Jola, let me come back to you. Last week on the Hangout, Jalia was talking about what the politicians have promised, and she was explicit and clear about it, and she was like, it is in line with the goals of the SDGs. And she's saying that all they have promised has been outlined in the SDGs and in the goals, in the SDGs that we're hoping to achieve. But how do you see us coming to terms with these goals as well as the promises that politicians have made? Looking at the fact that we're having a new government, promises here and there, and again the SDGs coming in line with the promises that they made. How do you see us collapsing these two and delivering for the layman and the common man on the streets as well as for every citizen of Nigeria and Africa at large?
Okay, in terms of the promises, achieving the SDGs, since they promised it, will automatically give them a ticket for the next election, right? And
Okay, just hold on a bit. I think you're on mute. All right, go ahead. No, I can't hear you. No, I still can't hear you. I'm reading your lips. Wait, can you just touch the jack, the port? Yeah, just kind of arrange that. Well, just try and fix that up. Let me come back to Dikbo. Dikbo, like I was saying, I was making mention of the whole, fact politicians have promised a lot of things, and last week on the Hangout, on the first part of the two-part serial, one of the contributors was like, okay, the SDGs and the promises that have been made by politicians actually go, hand in hand. But I'm looking at the possibility of collapsing these two. On one hand, the promises made by politicians, and on the other, the SDGs. How do you see us collapsing these two and delivering, for the benefit of you and I, as well as every other Nigerian and also every other African in Africa?
I think we have to hold our politicians accountable. When they make promises, they have to deliver on such promises. I mean, this is a new Nigeria where politicians can't fool people anymore to get into office. So when our politicians make promises, the people should actually hold them accountable to the promises that they've actually made. In view of the SDGs, I mean, some of the SDGs may actually be more important than the others in the context of Nigeria. So investing in quality education, for example, and creating decent jobs and employment for young people and the whole citizenry, for example, are key elements that the current Nigerian government, led by President Buhari, has to focus on. So we have to hold the Minister of Education and the Ministry of Education and all the departments of education to very high standards. We also need to hold the government. I mean, the APC actually promised to create thousands of jobs. The people need to hold the APC to account. So at the end of 3 years, at the end of 4 years, the APC and the federal government should be able to clearly say, this is the number of jobs we have created in the agricultural sector. This is the number of jobs we have created in the petroleum sector, in diverse sectors of the economy, and that way the economy grows, and I mean we are able to lift more people out of poverty and out of the lower class into the middle class, into the middle class in Nigeria. Because what we currently have is a lot of people, a lot of the Nigerian citizens are actually very poor. A lot of people can't afford decent meal or decent education. But once the government begins to invest in quality education, once there are decent jobs for young people, we would be increasing the size of the middle class in Nigeria, and that way promoting an egalitarian society. So we need to focus on those key elements of the SDG goals and hold our politicians accountable to their promises.
All right, Dikwa, just on the backstage, Jello was actually telling me some time back that Dikwa is actually a politician here, confirming that he's saying, and that we must hold our politicians, to their words and make sure that they deliver all the promises that they've made. Well, let me just come back to you now, Jello. Again, I hope your audio is back in good shape.
Back.
Okay, great, awesome.
Okay.
So one of the things Deepa talked about, apart from holding our politicians to book, as to delivering the promises that they have made, he spoke about some of the goals that are peculiar to Nigeria and important to Nigeria. Let me just ask you, if you are to, be in a position of implementing one of these SDGs, like, ASAP, which one would you prefer? Which one would you choose? Looking at the peculiarities and differences that Nigeria has with other African countries.
Oh, I will definitely implement Goal 9, which is innovation, infrastructure, and industry, focusing on the infrastructure, because the way an infrastructure, okay, if Nigeria tackles its infrastructure deficit now, it will in the long term improve the economy. For example, in Nigeria, we lack quality of life to an extent. For example, good roads, lack of quality education, transport, water, sanitation, waste systems. If we can address those issues, it will in turn, all the other goals will fall in place. Let's take, for example, zero hunger. We're trying to achieve zero hunger in the Sustainable Development Goals. If we can invest heavily in agricultural infrastructure, we can actually achieve zero hunger, because if we can provide farmers with constant water supply, good roads for them to transport their crops to markets, not only zero hunger, but it will improve our economy because jobs will be created, it will increase the productivity of the land, and what else? Export, GDP, everything. So infrastructure is infrastructure should be the central focus of achieving the SDGs. That's what I believe.
Okay, but you believe, like you said, that infrastructure should be the central focus, but infrastructure seems to be a phenomenon that won't just come about
Yes.
on a platter of gold. I mean, a lot of money has to be put in place, but how do we source these funds? Because the government's already saying we're broke. There's the issue of dwindling oil prices. Cash crunch here and there. How do we go about funding these things? How we go about funding infrastructure?
First of all, before we talk about funding, the government has to create conditions for attracting the funds. It has to make sure there's adequate planning. It provides us, the public, with long-term planning, with certainty, because the economy is a bit unstable, so we need stability. The government needs to provide us with certainty. And about the funds, we can get funding from, like I said, federal level, state level, NGOs, private sectors, and even individuals willing to make donations. We're all open to that.
Oh, okay, very well. Let me just hold you there for a bit and go back to Deepo.
Okay.
Deepo, Jalwa is talking about sources of funds, and she's listed quite a couple of agencies and windows that we can actually look in, talking about looking for funds. But do you think there are other windows that we could explore, looking at the fact that the ones we did explore in the past, there's been some form of a shortage of confidence looking at the way that these funds have been disbursed. Like you said earlier on in the show, that the implementation, the disbursement of these funds, hasn't been that transparent and hasn't been as explicit as it would have wanted to be by those who provide these funds. Moving forward, what do you think we should be doing apart from holding our leaders to book and questioning their every step and every move?
Yeah, I think it is very important for the government to urgently, diversify the economy. This point has been made time and time again. We need to diversify the Nigerian economy. We cannot be a single commodity exporter. We cannot continue to rely on oil. I mean, the price of oil has crashed from 120 to $100 to $70 to $50. Now it's hovering around 38 to $40. I mean, we cannot continue to rely on on revenue generation from oil alone. If countries like India and China can benefit from the huge population that they have, I don't see a reason why Nigeria cannot industrialize as well and be a low cost destination. Since wages in Nigeria are low anyway, that is an avenue for us to diversify the economy and ensure that our economy, we turn ourselves into a nation that produces and exports to the world. Because any country that continues to consume what the rest of the world produces and does not send anything out there is a country that is not going anywhere. Secondly, we need to cut down expenditure. I was on Twitter a couple of days ago. I think it must have been last week, where someone tweeted on behalf of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, asking for senators to send in their pictures and whatever for calendars and diaries and all those stuff. We need to cut down all those frivolous expenditures. I mean, if anyone needs calendar, if anyone needs diary, they should simply go to the market and get it themselves. We don't need to spend public resources on getting calendars, thousands of calendars and thousands of diaries and pens and cups for family and friends. I mean, if governors as well, or the president or the vice president is traveling out of the country or going from one state to the other, they lay rug and I mean, there's so much frivolities going on that we can actually cut out, and we can save so much and invest that on infrastructure, in the education sector, in the health sector. One other thing that we may need to do is, I mean, the states, for example, everyone depends. It seems that all the state governors actually depend on the federal allocation that comes from Abuja, and it is quite unfortunate that some states are actually in very serious trouble. So it is very, very important that states actually begin to diversify their own economy as well and look for ways to increase the IGR from each of the states. I mean, Kano, Lagos State, and Port and River State are states that are actually making so much from IGR. One would expect that other states actually start thinking about ways to actually generate and increase their IGR as well.
Okay, Deepo, I mean, you said quite a lot of things, but out of what you said, I mean, you made mention of twice, in fact, diversifying the economy and reducing that dependence or over dependence on oil or revenues that come from oil sales and also from the federation account. But then when you're talking about diversification of the economy, you have to bring about technological, innovations, which mostly comes from young people who largely have no funds. And I mean, nowadays you can't just walk into a bank and ask for funds. They ask for collateral. They ask for this condition to be met or that condition to be met. How do people like this come into the picture?
I mean, one would expect that first of all, the government invests a substantial amount of money on small and medium enterprises. So small scale businesses, for example, one would expect that the government actually give loans or grants to young enterprising people. And it is not just the responsibility of the government to actually do this. The private sector as well, universities as well, can actually give soft loans and grants to young enterprising individuals. I mean, if we actually encourage, Nigerians are very, very creative. We are very enterprising people. I mean, I have a lot of friends who have business ideas, but because they don't have family or friends or anyone to actually sponsor them, such business ideas actually just, I mean, they are just there. Nothing happens. Nothing happens to such business ideas. So if we are able to, I mean, create, I mean, invest in our young people, I would say, I mean, I've said this quite a number of times, and a lot of people have disagreed with me. I mean, I would suggest scrapping NYSC. We spend so much on NYSC, and young people don't get as much in return. So all the billions, I mean, we spend 80% or more of the budget on youth development on NYSC. If we actually scrap NYSC and invest that amount of money, I mean, into businesses, it will go a long way in creating jobs and in improving the economy overall.
All right, very well. Let me just hold you there for a bit and come back to Jelwa. Jelwa, earlier on, you were talking about, the government creating an environment, where all these things can fall in place. Yes, I know it is the duty of the government to create that environment, but in line with the SDGs, what do you think the government should be doing to, have that conducive environment for young people? Now, in relation to what Deepa is saying, talking about the diversification of the economy, and how what do you think the government should be doing in line with the provisions of the SDGs to create that enabling environment for young people with innovations, technological innovations, and other viable business ideas, for them to thrive in the system and bring about that change that the SDGs is trying to bring.
Okay. Part of creating the environment should entail transparency. If the government shows us, the youth, that okay, this is our goal, this is what we've achieved so far, this is what we want to achieve, this will encourage people. If we see tracking or progress of something, we would be encouraged to be involved. And also, Deepa mentioned something about loans, that in the UK, for example, there are student loans that enable them to go to universities. Okay, the government can create an environment to bring people in. For example, um, how do I put it? Sorry, like like giving them opportunities. I'm not against NYSC, because most people, that's the only job experience they have and that's the only income they have. So we can use this youth corpus, for example, to help them be involved, volunteer, set up SDG events that they would be involved in, going from places, areas, telling people, involving people, like the one held in Lagos by the United Nations. They engage the locals and they introduce the goals in Yoruba language. We can just keep calling people. It can be a part of a program, get involved, volunteer. We don't have to pay them. If you're passionate about something, you can be involved with even without payments. We can call, because we do have qualified, intelligent people. Like you said, innovation is really, really important in achieving our SDGs, and it's part of the goal 9 I mentioned: industry, innovation, and infrastructure. We need to employ these three together.
Oh yeah, that's right, and that was why I was actually holding you to your own passion, looking at goal line. But like I said earlier, we didn't start in time. We actually lost a bit of time, so we're running out of time quite early even as the conversation is getting so interesting. But Jello, let me just come to you to get your last word before we close this
Okay.
conversation. Yeah. So, what would be your last word?
My last word?
Yeah.
Okay. My last word would be Goal 9 should be implemented. I'm sure Depot is for Goal 4, that's quality education, but Goal 9 infrastructure. If we need to build good schools, or if there are schools, then student A and student B should be able to get to school. Reliable transport system, mobility. We need to satisfy mobility needs, or healthcare facility. Someone in a town should be able to get himself to the hospital through transport systems, and energy facility. Students going to school, if they decide to read at night, there's no electricity. We lack all of these things. So my last word would be Goal 9. Even though it seems outrageous, or it's not impossible, we do have limited funds, but if we can channel those funds to specific goal, if we can outline specifically what we need to achieve, and specifically the infrastructure that are lacking, then we'll be able to achieve them. So
Well, I also share in that optimism that despite the limited funds that we have, we'll be able to achieve some of these goals, if not all of them. I do sincerely, and yes, like I said, I do share in those goals. But Deepa, let me also come to you and get your last word before we close this hangout. What would be your last word?
Okay, my last word would be to encourage private organizations in Nigeria to invest in improving the quality of education in Nigeria. So, for example, creating, I mean, investing in entrepreneurial and leadership events, for example, and personal development events where young people can actually attend and build themselves. Also, for the government to, I mean, I know this new administration has promised to focus on the education sector. Part of the manifesto of the APC actually focuses on good education, and good education is one of the new 17 SDGs. So we urgently need to focus on good education and continue to speak up on good education, and encourage the federal government to invest in our state and federal universities, and for young people as well to make sure that they don't wait for the private sector or wait for the government. We need to develop ourselves. We need to invest in ourselves, because there are jobs in Nigeria, but there are jobs that some young people don't actually have the core skills necessary for those high level jobs. So young people need to invest in themselves, attend employability workshops and events and seminars, attend leadership seminars, and look for mentors, look for someone who they can actually tap from, someone who has been there and done that in the past. So that would be my last word for tonight.
All right, thank you very much, Dipo Awojide. You are calling from England, as well as Jalo Abello. Both of you are in England this evening, joining us. Me, of course, I am in Lagos, Nigeria. But it's been a very robust and a very educative and informative discussion, and we hope, yes, to continue this discussion in the future to get more people talking about the SDGs. Of course, that will put the government on its toes, because if young people are talking about something, yes, their ears have to come down and listen to what these people are saying. But then we have to hold it here. Thank you all once again for coming on board and sharing your thoughts with us. We do sincerely appreciate all that. My name is Victor Matthias, and yes, it is Google Plus Hangout for Channels B. Thank you once again.